Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to week 3 in the NFL. For those of you who are new and just joining me for the first time, what I do here is I just set a DraftKings.com lineup, go over some of my favorite plays, why I like those guys, and just kind of my thought process behind the slate, picking players, and so on and so forth. Hopefully, y'all had a good week in week 2. And I think with that being said, let's just jump right into this, and we're gonna go back and get a sweat with Mariota at quarterback here. I kind of like him more this week. Actually, I do like him more this week even than last. He's actually a home favorite now, and he has an implied team total which is much better than last week, sitting at just over 24 points. The Raiders have also given up 380 or more passing yards in their first 2 games, while allowing an average of 29 fantasy points to opposing teams' quarterbacks. I know it's early, and one of those quarterbacks that Oakland faced was Drew Brees when Brees was at home in the Mercedes Dome. But I think it's hard to ignore the 0.77 fantasy points per attempt that they are allowing to those quarterbacks. Mariota's legs help him set a floor. He sees not Cam-esque opportunities in the red zone in terms of him rushing the football, but he still does see some of those opportunities. So we got Mariota at a quarterback at $5,900. It's actually cheaper than last week. I think he was $6,100 last week. And he's going to allow us to work in a guy like D'Angelo Williams at our running back spot. And while I typically try and find home favorites for my running back spots, this week actually has me rostering 2 running backs that are on the road, and one of them is even a road dog this week. So unlike the quarterback position where efficiency can certainly outweigh sheer volume, although targeting both is obviously ideal, I want as much volume and touches as possible at the running back spot. D'Angelo Williams gives us that. He has an insane amount of snaps. He's playing 86% of his team snaps, and he's averaging 0.48 points per snap over the course of the first 2 weeks. So small sample size, but if we look back at what he did when Le'Veon Bell was out last year, it's pretty much on par with that. He's also seeing 7 targets per game, which is good for about 12% of his team's total target share, and that's not bad. That's not a bad percentage when you factor in that Antonio Brown is also on that same team, and he also has the most touches out of any running back in the league right now. So just true workhorse, pure volume play. Pretty solid team total. They are away, but they are favorites. So I think D'Angelo is worth paying up for in your cash game. And then let's see what else we got. We can fill in one of these wide receiver spots. So I think here we'll get the cheap guy out of the way. We'll go with Cole Beasley versus Chicago. And this one's pretty simple, and it was nice to see that Pat James is also on board with Cole with me. So I'll actually give you guys a sample and just read exactly what he wrote in his cash game write-up. But he said, Beasley remains at a low salary across multiple sites, especially on DraftKings. Really? $3,200 for a possession receiver with 25% of his team's targets over the first 2 games? That's 20 targets in 2 weeks, with 3 of them coming inside the 20-yard line. And add to that, his rookie quarterback is keeping an average depth of targets fairly short. The Cowboys are projected for the 3rd most game points on Sunday. That doesn't necessarily mean Beasley will score, but he's going to be a huge part of a moving chain as the Cowboys move up and down the field against the banged-up Bears. Even if Beasley doesn't get the work we project, and he bottoms out at 4-30-0, so 4 catches for 30 yards, that's still not going to kill your lineup. What he does do is allow us to get studs at other positions. And to that point, I'm actually not... obviously, like, D'Angelo Williams is a stud. I'm not getting what you would say, like, tier 1 wide receiver this week on DraftKings, just because there are so many wide receivers in that price point that's just right below those guys. One of them being Jordy Nelson. So he's probably the most expensive wide receiver that I'm really targeting for my cash game lineup. And I think we could certainly spend up to Antonio Brown, especially with Beasley and Mariota, and there's some cheap punts at tight end as well. It's just, like I said, it's just not really where my lineup construction is going. It's just not targeting those high-end wide receivers like Antonio and Julio, and then obviously if you're playing Sunday only, you don't get Julio since he's going Monday night. The Pack, I think they have the second highest implied team total, sitting at 28. I think the Saints are above that at home. It's not by much, though. They're also 7-point home favorites, the Packers are. Jordy's getting a ton of red zone targets as well. And he's tied in second in the league amongst wide receivers with 5 of those targets. He also has been extremely efficient with them, catching 80% of the targets and converting 2 of them into TDs. So that's really why I'm looking at Jordy here, is for the efficiency in the red zone when Rodgers looks his way. He's also averaging 8 targets per game, and it's good for 17% of all of the Packers' targets. To kind of put that into context or into perspective, Cobbs is seeing 11.4%. So Jordy's seeing a nice share of the Packers' overall target share. So the other running back, I told you we were going to target 2 away running backs, one of them being a road dog, and that guy is Melvin Gordon. I think remember in week 1 when Spencer Ware was like just the chalk among chalk, you were seeing him, 55% owned, and a lot of like the $20 double ups, $10 double ups, and then even some of the higher $50 double ups, you were seeing him around that same percentage of ownership, right around 50 to 55. I think 46 he might have been in the big $50 one. Don't quote me on that. I don't think Gordon reaches that level of ownership, but it could be close to it, as he might see a D'Angelo Williams-esque workload, and I think a safe projection is close to 75% of the team's running back touches. He managed to eclipse over 100 yards in week 2 and has seen 11 touches inside the 20 over the past 2 games, and 5 of those 11 were inside the 10-yard line. I know Indy is the favorite here, but I truly don't think it takes much for San Diego to get up by a score and try and slow down the pace of the Colts and just feed Melvin the Rock a little bit more than you would typically see or expect out of an underdog. So I'm totally fine with this price point at $5,800. He's very solid play and not somebody I'm looking to fade in my cash game lineup. Let's get another wide receiver here. Actually, you know what? Let's go get our defense. And defense is, I don't think you really need to overthink this one. There's not a whole lot to really look into. Dolphins are priced well. They face off versus a 3rd-round pick who has yet to take an offensive snap in a non-preseason NFL game. Cleveland has an implied team total sitting at 16 points, and honestly, I think that might be about 6 points too high, or 10 points too high. They could legit be held to 2 field goals. So, like I said, just don't overthink it. Plug in the Dolphins and go from there. Let's see. Let's go with that other wide receiver. We got a wide receiver, tight end, a flex. So I think Mike Evans is somebody who I love to target. He's been an absolute target. He's been an absolute target monster, as he's seen 24 targets through the first 2 games. I just said targets so many times. He's seen 24 targets through the first 2 games, which is good for the most in the league. He is also dominating the red show of his team targets at close to 20%. Evans is also going to be scoring up against one of the 2 following cornerbacks, Cody Sensabaugh or Troy Hill. Mike Evans has 5 or 6 inches, depending on who he lines up against, and a total and 40 pounds on both of those guys. So I think Evans eats this week, and I think for $7,000, there's no way that you can. Like I just don't understand how you don't plug and play him for $7,000. There's other guys like Landry at $6,600. There's guys like Larry Fitzgerald at $6,900 right below him. So I mean, yeah, I guess you can obviously go down if you want to spend up at a little bit at another position. But Evans is kind of a lock for me in cash. It's worth noting that Troy Hill also ranks 101st worst out of 102 corners according to Pro Football Focus. So matchup's golden. The team total's right. I think the team total is just sitting right at 23 points. So definitely somebody you want to target. Let's go with tight end here, and we're gonna actually target a guy who's minimum, and he goes by the name of Trey Burton. And Trey played in Monday night's game, which means his performance was not factored into his current salary. So we get to take advantage of that a little bit. He managed to catch 5 of his 7 targets in that game. And what was more encouraging is that 2 of those 7 targets came inside the red zone and 1 of them inside the 10-yard line. He's a large body red zone target. I really just got to stop using that word. I'm trying to think of something else. But he's standing at 6 feet 3 inches and he's weighing right around 230 pounds. I think for the price, the minimum here, and I think he's the minimum on multiple sites. And with no Ertz, he should see more than enough snaps and targets to pay off his salary. So you don't really have to overthink Ertz there. But I think at our flex, once again, not something that you necessarily really need to overthink. I mean, it leaves us with a fair amount of salary right now. We have $7,700. I think there's guys like CJ Anderson and Allen Robinson are in great spots again this week. But I'm going to use the $7,700 that are remaining to plug in David Johnson. Buffalo ranked below average in Football Outsiders rush DVOA in 2015, and they seem to be continuing that trend in 2016 as well. They have allowed just under 100 yards. I think it's like 97.8 or something like that between the last 2 games. And they're giving up close to 20 DK points to opposing teams' running backs over those 2 games. So we all know Johnson catches passes, and that's a huge plus for running backs, especially on DraftKings. But he's also seeing a heavy share of his team's red zone targets and opportunities as well. So I think that Johnson in the flex really helps you set the floor. You've got DeAndre Williams, once again, really helping you set the floor. And then Jordy and Evans give you huge upside with a ton of targets. It's a cash game lineup that I'm actually liking. I think I may just end up deploying this one as is. Probably not a whole lot of tinkering. You could look at a guy like Diggs if he's healthy on Sunday. Tajay Sharp is a really nice price too. If no Walker, Tajay Sharp could see the same amount of targets that Mike Evans is going to get, and you could definitely see 10 to 11 targets, especially if Walker's out. So those are 2 other guys you can look at. No reason to get off of CJ Anderson if you don't want to. I think he's in a great spot. But yeah, that's it, guys. Best of luck in week 3. If you have any questions, just hit me up on Twitter, and don't forget to check out the worksheet with all of the data sheet with all the data points in it, like red zone targets and with snap data, DVP data. Don't forget to check out Pat James' cash write-up as well as his GPP analysis. And then we've got the value sheets up on the side as well, showing you who we like in terms of a dollar per point perspective for each individual site for DraftKings and for FanDuel. So yeah, best of luck in week 3, and see you guys later.